It's the Sod Pod, brought to you by Grassland Agro. The Sod Pod. Hello, and welcome to episode 4. In the last episode, we covered first cut silage. If you didn't hear it, I'd advise you to go back and have a listen again. Today, we're going to cover a couple of topics, but the main one being grassland management. So if you look at, we're stepping into second round grazing. What are the key grazing principles we want to look at, Davey?
Yeah, James, second round grazing now, we're into early April. Probably around maybe 35 kilos of dry matter per day is what we'll be growing now at the moment. That's kind of the 5-year average, what we'll be looking at. At the moment, I suppose for farmers that are measuring grass, what you'll be looking at, the key points to look at, about 200 kilos of dry matter per livestock unit. That's what you're looking at. So between 5 and 600 kilos of dry matter as an average farm cover. And a great rule of thumb and a great indicator of where you are on your grazing. First graze paddock, Jim. So where that should be at the moment is about 1200 cover. So 1200 cover for someone that's not measuring grass is... So get into the sward, get down your knees, and grab the sward. I suppose 2.5 fists on top of each other. That's about 1200 cover. That's what you'll be looking at. So for someone that's not measuring grass, it's just a very good indicator. But look, I suppose just on the grazing side of things, since Paddy's Day, we were probably looking at 60% of the farm grazed. Come early April now, we're looking at 100% grazed into the second rotation. Heavier farms maybe 2 weeks later. But look, I suppose it's very important that we're reaching those targets. As I said, maybe about 35 kilos of dry matter. That's kind of the average over 5 years, but that's going to vary, James. They're kind of key points on that. Very important that we're meeting those targets, because I suppose we want regrowths, we want grass coming back, and I suppose it's very important that we have been meeting those targets all along. So look, I suppose just on the second round grass, it's a very high quality feed, and I suppose one problem with that is butterfat and butterfat suppression.
And just on that there, lads, I suppose we've a lot of farmers do grass measuring. It's kind of a religious process that they follow. We've some doing it a bit in and out, and then we've some not doing it at all. Sean, you'd have a bit of data on that and a bit of a story. What's your thoughts on grass measuring and how to get more guys to do it?
Yeah, well, look, I suppose grass measuring has been something that has been done on a lot of farms throughout the years. Probably not as many as we would like, but I suppose policy is directing farmers towards grass measuring now, particularly for derogation farmers. I think that anyone who just done the grass course there last year is going to have to measure farms this year and do 20 measures in 2022. So yeah, look, it'll be a new experience for a lot of farmers, but an experience and a job each week worthwhile doing. I've done a bit of it myself on the uncle's farm, and look, it's nice to get out and walking around the farm every week whenever I'm not on it the whole time. But I've seen the benefits of grass measuring. Some farmers have been grazing coverage that they thought was ideal, but was just always above, say, if the target was 1400, they were at the 1700, and they were maybe coming in with the top, or maybe on more occasions than you would like. But I suppose, look, since cows have gone out, whether it was January, February or March, the aim on a lot of farms, and most farms hopefully, was to get good graze outs. It sets the farm up to grow grass. The analogy I use sometimes with farmers is that if you don't get that first grazing, if you leave a wee bit behind you, it's like going to a restaurant and getting a big plate of spuds and leaving a bit behind you and coming back 21 days later and getting a nice fresh dinner put on top of it. You won't it's not nice still. You'd rather have the fresh stuff there in front of you.
John, you probably never had that problem with a plate that was not clear. But
only when I went to France that time, Jim.
The periwinkles didn't agree with you.
John prefers the dirty plate analogy, because as you said, James, there's never anything left.
Yeah. No, the trip to France, I nearly starved. I was like a briar for the whole lot. Sawed-out fish and periwinkles and snails and oh jeez, a cat. But no, I'd be generally a good man to put away the dinner. But yeah, I think the points the lads have touched on are really important. I think Dave's talk about, the first graze paddock could actually be the second or third graze paddock, because actually the first graze paddock sometimes gets a little bit of hardship, with cows in and out, and gets mucked up a little bit. I suppose the analogy about the dirty plate is very important, that if we maybe had to bail out of a bit of ground and it didn't get it fully grazed to our liking in that first rotation, is that we have to make sure that we get it grazed out properly now, or else we're going to be set up for poor quality grass for the whole year. I suppose it's important to look at your overall stocking rate. So what we've seen with dairy expansion is that an awful lot of farms have stocked their milking platform up, and we just have to understand what that means in relation to our second round of grazing, because often the second round of grazing ideally should be a 21-day round, but in a lot of cases it could be 23 or 24-day round. Just the grass availability, weather conditions have a big impact on that. So I suppose we can't expect the grass plant to do what it can. But in relation to grassland management, I suppose we're massive supporters of that. And grass measuring with our sponsorship of the Grass 10 programme and the brilliant work that the guys do as well. But I suppose this year more than ever, the reason that we're spreading fertiliser and we know the cost of fertiliser and feed has gone significantly more expensive. The reason that we're spreading it is to grow and utilise grass. And to maximise the utilisation, you have to measure. And I think Sean picked up a great point. The pre-grazing yield is something that I would argue gets lost a lot, because if you look at our average meal feeding is about a tonne. It's actually rising now. The average co-op supplier report is in around 410 kilos of solids, and that could be expected to rise maybe as or has risen slightly because of herd maturity and stuff like that as expansion is slowed. But there's a genetic potential in any dairy cow to do 500 kilos of solids, but we have to make sure we put the right cover in front of them, and that's critically important. I would argue that there's black white-eyed cows that would do the 400 kilos of solids, like if you had good enough grass and management, and it's something that's really important that we're hitting the pre-grazing yield, because the biggest flaw I see is that lads are grazing covers that are way too heavy. Now there's another school of thought from a really well-respected advisor that maybe you should graze those higher covers, because you can grow an awful lot of grass in the last couple of days. But it's something that you really have to have the right type of cow to do that.
Yeah.
You really have to have the right type of cow on balance. The quantity of crossbred cows in the country is quite small. As I said previously, I'm a big fan of crossbred cows. But if you're looking at that traditional Holstein Friesian, they're going to be more susceptible to have energy or fibre imbalances by the incorrect pre-grazing yield.
Yeah, 100%. And look at, I suppose, we're mentioning a lot of figures there, but you don't really, the farmers won't know what really pre-grazing yields they're grazing, or what yields of grass their animals are grazing if they're not getting out and measuring it. So it's really, really, really important. If there is surplus, some farmers are afraid of running out of grass. So they always try and keep that 100 or 150 or 200 or nearly 300 kilos ahead of where they should be per say if they're being advised to graze the 14s, they're comfortable enough to graze the 1600s. But I suppose once you get to the 1600s, 1700s, there's just that wee bit more fibre creeping in. Fibre is less digestible, and if we're looking to drive dry matter intake, that's what drives output, and we want to be getting nice leafy swards in as much as possible. And if we're leaving that 150, 200 behind of stem, as I said, unless it's baled or topped and corrected that way, it's going to be there the next time.
And Sean, we need to be kind of continuously monitoring the cows, because even probably 10 to 12 weeks after the calf down, it's only then they're hitting their peak intakes. So every day and every week after the calf down, intakes are increasing. So you need to be mindful of that and kind of adapting to your allocations, or be it 12, 24, 36 hour allocations. You need to be aware of that. If you are having these 200 cover left over, or some of a residual there, but yeah, look, and even on the negative energy balance there, it's probably, I don't know, 6 or 8 weeks maybe after the calf down that cows are hitting their peak production as well. So they've hit peak production before they've ever hit peak intake. So it's tough on the cow, especially as you're coming up and close to the breeding season, and you're trying to get a cow in calf and get her to hold.
Yeah, and listen, I think sometimes the grass measuring and the grassland management piece maybe gets a bad rep, to be perfectly honest, because people think that, if you're measuring grass, you can only feed 500 kilos a meal, and some people consider that starvation. But the 500 kilos, the reason that bar is set, and in fact it's probably climbed a little bit, even the talk at any Teagasc event is closer to 600 or 700. But the reason the bar is that low is so that you have something to strive for, and they're setting the bar low so that you try and get as close to it as possible. But what we're trying to do with concentrate is just fill the gap. I suppose there's a couple of maybe things that could come across as contradictions, and that's in relation to subacute rumen acidosis, which usually manifests as butterfat suppression, which is often a lack of fibre. When we're talking about grazing lighter covers, so there's less fibre. But the reason for that is that at the 1400 cover, you have the perfect balance for the cow of fibre, energy and protein. But as you move further into heavier covers, you don't have enough energy. So what you're going to see is when you graze those heavier covers, your protein's going to take a big hit, even though your fibre or your butterfat might actually improve. So we have to look from a nutritional point of view of the ingredients in the concentrate that we're feeding, because the concentrate is very important, as Dave said, because the disadvantage of concentrate is actually the advantage of concentrate in that earlier period where we're getting the substitution effect. So because of the relative fill value of concentrate versus grass, we can actually get more energy into the cows in that really critical period to try and get more energy into them so they don't get ketosis or negative energy balance and lose too much condition.
And just on that, John, we're seeing huge pressures now on the feed costs out there, and obviously we're coming out of a huge pressure point, which was the fertiliser supply and pricing as well, which is causing that issue. One of the biggest 12 weeks of the season is coming up, which is breeding. What are some of the things we can do to get the best results here?
Yeah, so some of the things that we can do is obviously look at our body condition score, and this is one that David is very finds unbelievable. He's always got a bee in his bonnet like the roller about body condition score, and it's something that we've done a lot of, myself and David especially, and Sean came on then, and we took him on the apprenticeship, Dave, and he should get the.
We had some arguments over if it was a high 2.75 or a low by 2.5. It's 2.75. Move on.
He'll get the driver's license there someday soon, Dave, I'd say, but he's a good bit to learn yet. But I suppose, listen, keeping an eye on condition score is very, very important, and getting someone to I suppose appraise your own cows that's independent, because if you're looking at them all the time, you can come a little bit complacent, or you can't see the wood from the trees, I'd say. So that's very, very worthwhile doing. It's something that we do as part of the sustainability program on the monitor farms, just because I suppose what's really important for us in relation to nitrogen use efficiency is that we get the output. And we're very animal focused as well as plant focused. We have an animal nutrition range, we have the dairy hygiene range as well. But it's really, really important that we are able to join up the whole lot. So that's something that we've done, I suppose, to make sure you're in the target condition scoring of 275. I suppose the thing about condition scoring that I would say is that you want to do it early so that you can perform some preventative actions. Any cows that are over.
When is early, John, in a time sense? Yeah,
so you want to be going 6 weeks minimum before your plants start breeding. So that's work back from your mean calving date. So that's really important that we do that, but to give yourself enough time to make putting cows on once a day for 2 weeks isn't going to have enough of an impact.
Yeah, and it's really easy to do, John. I know you have to.
That's debatable for you, Sean.
For John and David, Sean, is it?
Well, look, if I picked it up easy enough, I think
next day we're out now, Sean, we'll throw John up the crush, and that'll be your final test.
I'll be in junior C pre-season then, so it should be good order then.
Yeah, but sure, the body condition score is only one aspect of it too. There's, I suppose, in some cases, depending on the type of system, I suppose whenever you're at that stage in the year reaching peak milk production, there might be the concentrate usage might be lowered, so there might be only maybe 2 or 3 kilos of meal being fed per cow per day. So it's just important that the animals are getting the correct level of minerals that they require, like calcium, phosphorus, selenium, copper and iodine. Supplementation is very important. important after that cow calves down and whenever we're coming into that stage of breeding. So it's just important to look at the level of meal input per cow, look at the inclusion rate of maybe some of the minerals, and something like a phos block hung up in the yard or on the way out to on the roadway, say heading for the paddocks, could be a good place to start if you're looking at supplementing minerals.
Definitely, Shawnee, because even if you talk about that breeding there and condition scoring, and cows are a bit under, like even if you just take the condition scoring, if you could always maintain that a cow at a body condition score of 3 means she has a small bit of reserve on her, that would be ideal, and that's very hard to do. But it's fair to say that a cow is nearly always under pressure, because if you up the meal, I suppose, or the meal you're supplementing to a cow, chances are she's going to put that towards milk production rather than put it on herself, and that's just, I suppose, the way they are. Look, they're a savage animal that way, but it's just, I suppose, you need to try and, I suppose, adapt it. John said even maybe cutting back to once a day milking or something like that, just to try and put a bit more condition and reduce what she's milking and put more onto her own maintenance. But look, it is very hard to do, but I suppose with the amount of grass and the amount of meal that's going into them, and John talked about that subclinical acidosis, it's a major problem, probably happening in a lot of cows. Biggest problem is that we can't see it. So getting the likes of a sodium based product like the phos block or something like that to buffer the rumen and slow it down, and I suppose get more efficiency out of what's going through the rumen itself. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I'd agree. And like, I suppose the one thing just to say to everyone listening is that grass is a superior feed than concentrate when it's grazed at the right cover. Like, you know, that's absolutely critical. I suppose making sure that we have our figures done up when we're talking about maintaining, or the maintenance and the production demand for the cow is very important, so that we're feeding them appropriately. If we need to use a little bit of concentrate to do that, that's very important that we use strategically. But I suppose what we can't do this year is to use concentrate to meet the mineral requirements, and which a lot of farmers do. You know, they keep a couple of kilos pucked into them the whole way during the year. Some people would argue it's easier to get them into the parlour, which is fair, you know, but using it as a form of minerals is really cost ineffective, because what you're looking at is that concentrate this year per dry matter basis is going to be at least 40 cent a kilo dry matter, you know, and that's really important. It's not the price per tonne. There's 12% of the tonne of meal is water, so we have to make sure that's as a significant cost to the whole lot. I know the protein will be reduced as we go through the year as well, but especially on derogation farms, so that you could have a cheaper ration. But it's really important that we augment the mineral requirements with something like the block. And so as the block is very simple, it works on the premise that when they have a mineral deficiency, they'll lick it, and when they don't, they won't, and that's really important. So you're not overcooking them or undercooking them, and they have access to it. But just to go back and you look at how we're going to feed the cow, how we're going to be cost effective, even at the price of fertiliser, your mid-season grass is only going to be costing you a maximum of 11 cent a kilo dry matter, which is about a quarter of the cost of concentrate. So we can feed the cows and produce milk very effectively from grass. If we need to supplement minerals, then do so using something like the block. And even cows that are going to be getting the 2 or 3 kilos because the farmer wouldn't dream of doing otherwise, it's often beneficial to add the block in there as well, Sean.
Just onto the block there, lads, like you've mentioned there, this is the Calci Phos from Grassland Agro, and I suppose it's self-regulated on sodium. It's got a really high level, 9% of phosphorus in it as well. It's really good for improved animal fertility for breeding and all year round production. It's actually a really great block to have in the yards all year round. Yeah,
that sodium base, I suppose whenever the animal is licking the block, it's creating bicarbonate, which is a natural rumen buffer. You have rumen buffers in the calci grit as well, but I suppose it's just trying to maintain. Some farmers would often say that if you look after the rumen, you look after the animal. So it's about, I suppose, maintaining that rumen pH and stopping the fluctuations that might occur. So the sodium is really good in that sense. And look at sometimes, as you mentioned earlier there, John, about farmers like someone else maybe coming in to look at the herd and seeing what the body condition score is like. But on a couple of occasions there last year, like normally farmers will put the cows out in the morning, they'll shut the gate and they come back in and collect them in the evening. But going out actually and having a look at them there, seeing what they're at, if they're ruminating, if they're laying down, if they're happy, if they have access to clean water. Like, water makes milk, so we need access to nice fresh water. In a lot of cases, farmers have increased the size of their herd. The water systems and the size of drinkers might have stayed the same, and they could have been under pressure before they even increased the size number. So it's addressing some of them issues, and I know you can get into it in a lot of detail, but there's a load of different factors that affect dry matter intake, and if you try and simplify it down a small bit and make it relevant to your system, you might be able to get a bit more production out of your herd that you weren't getting in the past.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one that we'll talk about in a bit more detail about infrastructure, Sean, as well, because it is critically important to have your paddocks the right size, your good enough access. But I suppose a couple of things before we move on there is just in relation to lay calvers as well, is that they can often get over conditioned, and I suppose the natural response is to try and take condition off them, but actually they're going to be severely restricted in what they can actually intake. So your best bet with the lay calvers, if they are over conditioned, is to milk them once a day. Any lame cows as well, that's really important that you give them a chance to get back on track before you think about bulling them. And then another thing that isn't commonly practiced but is very beneficial is metry trekking cows. It's not a very complicated process, but it can really help to identify cows that are going to come under pressure. The minerals are very important. The phosphorus it's the same as in the soil. It's about the limiting nutrient, but phosphorus is generally in short supply. Dave is a phosphorus expert, as we know, but Dave is going to be talking about phosphorus concentrations. But supplementing in there the key times, phosphorus is key for fertility and getting the egg to attach to the wall of the womb and making sure that the cow goes in calf.
And another one there, John, on the phosphorus, and I suppose another block is the Nutri-V fight block. It's another, I suppose, super product we have there.
For the bull and heifers, it'd be ideal, Dave, isn't it?
Bull and heifers, yeah, and even beef stock, sheep, a great product. And I suppose on the bull and heifers there, it's, I suppose, with the garlic, it has that fly repellent, which is massive, because I suppose more and more common, John, is you'd hear incidences of mastitis there with heifers, and the other one then is the parasite control, and that's going to be major going forward. I suppose come July there's going to be more pressure around trying to get your hands on dosing products for internal parasites. I suppose you're going to have to get a prescription, and that's going to be on a test basis. You're going to have to do fecal egg counts to get a dosing product. So yeah, the garlic block or the Nutri-V fight block, it's a super option there. There is garlic in it, and garlic is another major one. We talk about it for milk production and that, but same thing for growing animals. For, as you said, bull and heifers, they're going in calf, they're trying to retain an embryo, and I suppose they're under massive pressure, and it's just the availability of phosphorus on ground when you hit those high growth rate is trying to get enough phosphorus into the animal.
And that's a big one, Dave, that like even from curtains that they would have found years ago, that even on a high index 4, that there's insufficient dietary phosphorus to support an animal during that summer period because of the quicker growth rates, and it's something that I suppose gets lost a lot. Often when we have a poor scan, we're going back through milk ureas if you're a Glanbia supplier and what other co-ops provide that, but we're flying through it. But I think, Dave, aside from regulation, it's just there is a lot of mounting resistance in relation to the way maybe that we used wormers previously. Bruce Thompson, I think, I don't know him now, but I see the work that he does in relation to dung beetles and the effort that he puts in to try and take a more holistic approach to parasite control. And I think fair play to him, number one. Number two, it sounds like some hardship, the way he has his traffic light system set up, and listen, he's very passionate about, I suppose we're passionate about soil as well, and maybe it's a niche subject, but fantastic work that he's doing there. But this is kind of taking some of the cues from that, or maybe some of the multi-species. That particular block has a lot of antioxidants that work very effectively, Dave, and I suppose it was something that maybe we were...
Yeah, I suppose a bit of work we done there last year, John, on 3 particular farms. I suppose what we found there was a 75% reduction in dosing, and that was down to, I suppose, a reduction in parasites with those anti-helminthics and what the antioxidants is doing.
Yeah, and it was something, I suppose, they have to call a spade. The products were manufactured in France. a drier climate. I would say that we were hopeful, but we weren't that confident. But no, remarkable performance. Heavy farms would be a high, I would say. Some of the trial farmers now, we know one of them particularly well between us, Dave, and he would have been a great guy to get us to dose animals. Maybe if I called on a Saturday and you called on a Sunday, he'd nearly get us to both to dose them, like, so.
Double dose.
Yeah, you get a good killing them, sure, to be honest.
But just on the V fight, so you mentioned the antioxidants. They protect against the internal and external parasites. It's rich in garlic, as you said, David, so that's acting as like a fly repellent there mid-season.
That's right, Johnny. Yeah.
It has your sodium base as well, which we talked about. It produces the bicarbonate, the natural rumen buffer, and it has your biotech as well, which is looking after rumen. So it's
the seaweed. The biotech is to make it simple for lads. But listen, I think it's going to be a massive one this year, Sean, with the pressure on getting dosing products. But we need to be doing the right things. We need to be, I suppose, doing more fecal egg counts, and we need to be doing them in advance of dosing. Most people use fecal egg counts to test how effective their dosing regime is. We actually need to go and say, and listen, Dave, one of the reasons that we were talking about that farmer that would be very actively dosing is that he got caught with killing cattle with fluke about, I'd say, 25 years ago, and ever since then it's been like a...
Yeah, he got a lecture from the vet in the abattoir, and that was the start of it.
It wasn't going to happen to him a second time anyway. And then there was another neighbour driving him demented then as well.
That's great, lads. We'll call it a day there, so. Just a couple of takeaway points. Stick as best to the 21-day rotation. Measuring grass, get out and walk that farm. Understand and know your covers. John is a big fan of crossbred cows, not a big fan of periwinkles. Breeding, consider the calciphos as a mineral supplementation. Feed the need, not the greed. And of course, Nutri-V Fight is the antioxidant to protect against internal parasites, and garlic as a fly and external parasite repellent. Thank you for tuning in. Mind yourself out there. Farm smart, farm safe. Hey, thanks for listening to the Sod Pod. We hope you enjoyed it. To find out more, head over to www.grasslandagro.ie or check out our social channels: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn and YouTube. That's all for this episode. See you next time.